199 and 165 as well, and they should be headed back as well.
I remember that day like it happened this morning. It's that clear of a picture. On August 19th, I remember it was getting really hot. Summer was in full force now. Things were really dry. The temperature was really hot. We got dispatched to the Woods Canyon Road, which was where the Twisp River Fire started. And as soon as we dispatched, we were on our way. And as we got there, things seemed pretty normal. Fire wasn't completely out of control, and it was just slowly creeping up the hill. There were some structures in danger. As we were doing that initial hike up the road, you know, it's thrilling in a lot of ways. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, especially if you're new to it. But at that point, during the fire, I wasn't too scared of what was going on. It seemed like everything was under control. Of course, there's a lot of smoke in the air, but nothing seemed really out of the ordinary. But when things did start to really get scary is when there started to be some propane tanks that started venting. When the fire is near those tanks venting is extremely loud. I did start getting a little nervous. The intensity of the fire started picking up. This was a real fire, and it seemed like it had the potential to turn into something a lot bigger. We noticed there was a big wind shift. The wind started picking up, the intensity of the wind started picking up, and you could feel that gust come across your face. And at that very moment, the fire was below us at this point, but at that very moment, it seemed like fuel from the clouds, like gasoline was poured onto this fire, because within an instant, it just exploded. The trees were engulfed, and that fire was now coming directly at us. Intense moment of chaos. It went from 0 to 100 within just a couple of seconds. Our crew jumped in our engine, and really at that point, our only chance of getting out of there was to drive back downhill, and that meant driving through the fire. Problem was that there was zero visibility. It wasn't even that there was a lot of smoke, it was just pure flame. The tallest flames I had ever seen in my life at that point. The heat was extremely intense, and it was just pure orange and red wherever you looked, and you could not really see the road at all. And really all you could see is just the red glow of the flame. As we were proceeding down the road, the visibility was so bad, the driver of the engine ended up veering off to the right-hand side of the road, and we went off a steep embankment into a ravine, and that is where our engine came to a really abrupt stop, and we crashed at the bottom of it, and our engine was completely stuck right there, and we were surrounded by the flames because we essentially crashed right into the midst of the fire. So I swung open the door. I was on fire, and my only option was to try to get to our safety zone, which was down below, but that meant running through the fire on foot. And the fire was so intense that I knew it was either die right there or at least die trying to run out of that situation. I climbed up the hillside, got to the road, to the gravel road, and just started screaming as loud as I could that there was guys behind me. And I remember looking down at my boots, and they were literally smoking. I was wearing a pair of leather boots, and the laces were singed and everything. These guys were putting me in the back of the fire engine, and we were heading down the road to meet up with an ambulance, which was then going to take me to a life flight to get me out of there and get me treatment, because at this point I was burned 65% of my body. I was begging for the medics to pray for me, and after a couple doses of pain medication, everything went black. I went to sleep, and I woke up about a month later in Seattle, Washington at Harborview Medical Center. I woke up to essentially to being a mummy. I was completely wrapped in gauze from head to toe. All I could see was my feet. So I went from a lifestyle of loving the outdoors and working in the outdoors and being outside almost 24/7 to being locked up inside and having nothing but a window to look out. with physical injuries, as far as my burns went, as far as the pain in my bones and skin went, a lot of times you can cover that up with different pain medications that are out there. But the mental trauma, that is so hard to overcome. And even after your physical injuries heal to a certain degree, those painful memories, they never ever leave you. I'll have those with me till the day that I die. I lost 3 buddies that day. Other firefighters were injured. Not only did my life change, but the lives of everybody around me, the lives of the people around me changed. When I look back and I think about what we could have done better that day, I think the first and foremost thing was training. But when it comes to the training of the individuals that you're sending out in harm's way, you cannot cut corners at all, or else disaster strikes. I was only on a handful of fires before the Twisp River Fire. That was my first year working as a wildland firefighter. I truly feel like my law enforcement training is what saved me that day. I'll tell fire crews that, and you can always kind of see their faces in shock, like, how does that even apply? Not so much technique of how to use a Pulaski or how to apply water to a fire. Of course, all that's important, but really what's even sometimes potentially more important is how you're going to respond mentally to that situation. It's hard to say if, what could have changed the outcome of that day, but I do think if there was training put in place, that maybe the outcome would have been different. Every wildfire season seems to seemingly grow in intensity, and these fires are burning hotter and more, they're growing more rapidly, and there just seems to be more of them. Really what it comes down to is not only better training for our firefighters, but better resources, and that comes down to funding. At the end of the day, we need as much resources as possible to be able to fight these fires. When you think about wildfire, of course, there's a huge upfront cost, but the cost down the road can potentially be even far higher. There could be lives lost, there could be home loss. All of a sudden there's a lot of rehab work that has to be done. Having that funding up front is almost like an insurance policy in a lot of ways, that it can ensure that there isn't going to be even more disaster down the road. Sadly, it's extremely expensive to fight these things, but by paying for those costs up front can potentially save a lot more money down the road. Going forward, I want to see everything from our rookies up to our senior firefighters be able to receive top-notch training. I think about the guys that are out there on the line. All I can really do at this point, being that I can't fight fire anymore, is pray that their training is up to par and that they're comfortable doing what they're doing, and praying for their safety. I always knew that, or at least I always felt, that Western Washington was a place where I could come to escape fire season, because it's typically damp, and you really aren't going to see the fires here. But as we saw this year and in the couple years leading up to this year, Western Washington has changed. We now see a lot of fire here, and this season it was hard on me. The smoke brings back a lot of memories. Seeing the flames at night out my window, the eerie glow off in the distance, that stuff is really, really hard. It brings back a lot of hard memories. Having the proper funding in place is going to make sure that we can have all those resource orders that we need. When firefighters are calling in for a bucket drop or a retardant drop, we need to, or they need to know that that resource is actually going to be provided to them, because it can mean the difference of a home burning down and not, or it can also mean the difference of a crew being overtaken by a wildfire or not. Those resources are a must. In the early days of my recovery, my job was simply to recover. I spent hours, literally thousands of hours in therapy. One of my therapists said, "Daniel, what are you doing all this therapy for?" And I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't really know why I was doing it. I guess I was just doing it to get better, but I didn't have any goals set for myself at that point. Something that I always wanted to do was climb Mount Rainier ever since I was a little kid. The Twisp River Fire, I felt like, was so hard because I felt like Mother Nature had taken so much from me and my buddies and the families, and I felt like being able to conquer Mother Nature would be a way of me showing life that nothing would stop me. And I felt like climbing Mount Rainier would be a way in my mind that I could conquer Mother Nature. I started training to summit Mount Rainier, and I wanted to summit on the memorial of the Twisp River Fire in honor of my brothers, just to be able to hopefully motivate others as well, that no matter what you go through in life, if you set your mind to something, you can do it. Even though I didn't end up summiting on the memorial of the Twisp River Fire, I summited the day after. Once I was at the top, you know, I thanked God, I thanked my family for getting me there, my brothers getting me there, and it was an incredible feeling. It was painful in a lot of ways, physically. It was physically challenging. It was mentally challenging, but it was also the best hardship that I had gone through in a lot of ways. I truly felt my brothers was with me that entire climb up that mountain. That, you know, at over 13,000 feet, that was, I felt like, the closest I've physically been to them since the day of that accident. I believe that they were in heaven looking down on me, and standing on that mountaintop, I got to feel like I was right there with them.